What are we going to do in the next 30 minutes? We are, again, giving an introduction, touching the basis of what it is neurobiofeedback. Biofeedback with a particular focus on neurobiofeedback, which, as it says into this title, is a technique which we use in order to reshape our brain. So the idea which is behind is that our brain is capable to learn, to change in time, and if we know how our brain changes, we can use this knowledge in order to do different things. This knowledge about brain plasticity is at the base of modern theory about learning and teaching. It's at the base of modern theories about rehabilitation, as we mentioned yesterday. And biofeedback is one of those techniques in which an individual tries to use those techniques in order to improve some specific things that you want to improve. It can be, from calming you down in order to control your mental stress or your level of attention, or there are some clinical applications which are relevant for reducing head pain till treating some distress or depression, which can be used. And there have been attempts in even more complicated cases in which neurobiofeedback has been used in order to reduce, for instance, dependencies from drugs or other kind of dependencies. So there is a wide range of applications. I will not go in details into the applications, but I just want to pass you the basic idea which is behind this methodology, in case any one of you is interested. First of all, it has different names because we can use biofeedback in several ways. We can start from brain biofeedback, ECG biofeedback, EEG biofeedback, attention training. It has different names, and most likely because those are the names which reflect the area where those techniques are coming from. Because it's not that it started in one specific field, but it started altogether in the 60s, 70s from different kinds of areas. When we started understanding and the first knowledge was built about how plastic was our brain, cortical area of our brain. Now, the first concept in biofeedback is that actually you get feedback every day. You, even if you look at yourself into the mirror, you have a form of feedback. Feedback meaning you take an information and you propagate this information to yourself. What it makes a difference between normal feedback and a very good biofeedback is, first of all, the capability to have an accurate feedback. So you need to know exactly what you are looking, and you need to know exactly how to manage the information that your brain is getting from everyday activities. Because you get feedback, your brain gets feedback every day from everything you do. I mean, if I think to my balance, my capability to stand, this is a function of very different mechanisms behind that. So there is the visual stimulus, vestibular stimulus, so my ears are responsible for my equilibrium, and for instance, proprioceptive sensing, so the capability to feel things with the tactile sensing organs which we have in our body. And what I do when I stand is that my brain processes all those informations without even me paying attention to that. And you don't really understand how much this is relevant in your everyday life. Unless you don't start doing some exercises. For instance, if I close my eye and I pay attention, you will notice that the oscillations of your body increase because you are taking off one of those feedback loops that you use in everyday life. If, and there are experiments, if I cover your ears, or when you feel dizzy, you have a cold, and you have something going wrong in your ears, your balance is different. You don't have the same capability to keep your balance in the same manner. As well as if you have problem in your sensory system, which sometimes is not your case, you start seeing that your balance is not the same anymore. That's because we don't even think to all those biofeedback mechanisms that we use every day. But the first step in order to have a good approach to biofeedback is really to have an accurate biofeedback. For instance, I need to be able to properly interpret the images that I get from the world which is surrounding me. So if I am in such a situation, that's something that I need to correct. So our brain tends to see in the images that I see what I already want to notice. So we are biased in our experience of elaborating informations which are surrounding. And it is a problem because our brain needs to be retrained in order to be able to properly perceive the reality which is around ourselves. For instance, do you know this image? Have you seen this before? For those of you which have not, do you think that the A and the B square are colored in a different manner, or is it the same color? How many of you think it is different?
The color.
Color of the A square and the B square. Who think it's different? Many of you. Who think it's, so you think it's different? And indeed it is, because it is the same. It's just that your brain is processing this information in regard to whatever it is around and not as an absolute content. Let me show you that they are the same. If I take off this, are they the same? If I take off that, are they the same? Now, they are the same. There is no trick. Once you will have the electronic version of these lights, you can even check. That's exactly the color I used. They are the same. It's just that your brain processes information not only focusing on the thing that you think you are looking, but there is a strong influence from whatever you have around. Let's see that. If I start adding the other pieces, your brain struggles understanding that they are the same color. If I take off the surrounding images, finally your brain sees what your eyes are seeing. You need to deeply understand that you have two levels of vision. One is in your eyes, and it's somehow the mechanical or the optical perception of the surrounding world. And the other one is in your brain, which actually gives you the capability to interpret this image. There are several exercises you can do in order to prove that. For instance, write down on your paper what you see in this image. Have you seen this before? Those of you which have not, write down what you see in this image. Please, do. What do you see?
A old woman.
Young woman. What do you see in this image? What did you write down?
I see
Young woman. You? Old woman. Do you want to see both? What if I color this part? Do you start seeing the old woman? This is the nose. This is the mouth. The eye. Do you see the old woman now? Or the gentle lady in this room? Do you start seeing the young woman? That's the nose, ear, and she's looking behind. You see that? So from the same image, your brain will process it in a different manner. And believe it or not, you do that every day. You see how strong it is, our brain. It pushes you to notice only what you already have in mind. Has been a gender bias this? I don't know. But we see two different things. If you take off those images from the underlying figure, then it's even more clear. So if you have to judge this image without the context, that's a young woman, this is a young woman. But when you overlap this with surrounding information, then your brain is not anymore as accurate as you think it is. Now think back to all your life and process it again. So it's very strong, this attitude we have, which our evolution, went in this direction. Perhaps there is a social advantage for that. Well, I'm not an expert, but still, I just want to show you how easy it is to be tricked by our brain. Brain can be trained in different directions. Already, nowadays, if I give you a chapter of a book, you can read, process, learn, and do whatever. If I was giving you a book when you were the last year of high school, you could have shown it to me, most likely. So your attitude to the study has been growing in the past few years, exactly as your body. So if you train your body, you can train your mind. And one of the principles of biofeedback, neuro-biofeedback, is that you can train your brain in order to do things which otherwise you cannot control in the same manner. You have to think that the majority of your brain is actually arrives to maturity across the first 2 or 3 years of life. And this is when the majority of interconnections among cortical cells in our brain are linked together. So we have our brain cells whose number arrive to the maximum very early in our life, and then the brain is the first organ which is developed. If you see kids, basically the head is not that much different than the one you have when you grow up. Why your body changes a lot? That's because your brain as a mass, it's almost there since the very first years of your life. But what really changed after the second or third year of life, even during those, are the connections among brain cells. So the mass is there, it's already mature when you are about 3 years old. But the level of connections that you make across the life, because of the experience that you do in everyday life, they change very much according to your experience, and that's exactly what we can train. Obviously, we lose part of this capability by growing up, exactly as we lose the capability to train our body with age. And that's also because our brain arrived to a steady state fairly soon. So for instance, when we are 5 years old, all the brain is about 3 kilograms, and it absorbs the majority of our oxygen and the majority of our oxygen and sugar. So the brain is one of the organs in our body which absorbs almost the majority of our sugar and brain, although it's not more than a small percentage of our weight. That's exactly how it looks like. So we have cells when we are newborn, 1 month, 6 months, 2 years. What it is really changing from this histological point of view? It's not the number of cells. Yes, obviously it's changing, but come on, it's not impressive. I look here, it's 3, 5, 6, and then it's the same, and then it's again the same. What it is changing is the number of connections between different cells. Every time you do an experience, you are actually creating a new connection between 2 different parts of your cortical brain. And then what happens is that, for instance, when you learn something, I am passing you a concept which, I don't know, could that be new to many of you? Have you discussed those issues before? Plasticity of your brain? Good. So this is a new concept. I am introducing you to what it is known as to be the plasticity of your brain. You now get different impressions. Then you will go home. What will happen is that you will get other stimulus by going back home, whatever you will do this afternoon, a nice weekend is in front of you. You will lose part of those connections which you are currently developing. Your brain is in this moment creating connection with the relevant cortical areas. For instance, you are putting together this image, which is in a specific part of your brain, with the area of your brain which is dedicated to, I don't know, reflections about analytical knowledge. Okay? Now, if you go home and you don't think anymore to this lecture, then this knowledge will be lost, meaning that our interconnections across relevant brain areas is very fragile when you create it. And that's also because, you know, you may have several false impressions in your life, so you don't really need all the knowledge regarding all the things that you see every day. You actually cancel the majority of information you see from the very first time you open your eyes in the morning to the very last time you close your eyes in the evening. It's more what you see but you don't keep than what you actually keep as a memory of each day. And that's because once you see a new concept, in this case this introduction to neuroplasticity, you create new connections. Those connections are very fragile. If you want to keep this connection, what do you have to do? You have to go and study, deepen the topic, repeat the lesson, go through the material that we give you. Eventually, that's the way you do. Google it, look for a video on YouTube, find additional material. And this exercise will have two effects. You will keep the most relevant connections, the ones which were correct, and you will erase those things which eventually has been misleading. So the action you do once you are at home is exactly this one, to clean connections which are not correct and to reinforce those which are really correct. Then, if you go again on this subject, revising, or because you will have another lecture which based on this one and depends on topic, this will further reinforce those connections. So at the end of this process, you will have few of those connections which are stronger and will last longer. The stronger they are, when you finish your training, whatever it is, the higher is the chance that you keep those connections longer in your life. And there are many factors affecting this process. There is an emotional memory, so your emotions, they have an implication on the quality of those connections, how long they will last, how strong they are. There are many factors, that's one. Even biological factors, I mean the amount of food, the level of sugar in your brain, many other factors. Your fitness, your brain fitness in this case. And the process I just described, you are exposed for the first time to an image, you don't have the connection, then you start having a connection, then you clean up false connections, and then you consolidate your knowledge. You make the few important ones stronger. This should be reflected into the way you study. You know that once I go to a lecture, I am exposed to a new concept, some of which good, some of which misleading, because I don't fully understand it. You know, I've seen the old lady, you've seen the young lady, so my brain can be misleading. Or in some cases, can read only one part of the information and miss the other. But when you start seeing the old lady and the young lady, you are starting creating a new connection, which you had known before. And then if you go and reinforce this knowledge, that's when you make this real knowledge in your brain. And your process to learning should reflect this physiological process of your brain to learn. So you have a lecture, you listen, you know already that some of the things you will get here, some other things you will get once you will go home and you will reflect. Most important, you need to cancel false impression. And you go through the material. The sooner the better. The sooner the better. Once you've done that, you have to repeat. You have to revise. Because that's when you will make your link stronger. Come on guys, you know. For all the models you have done in your past years, those which you rushed up in the very last days, you don't even remember you had this examination after a couple of years. For those in which you had a new concept, revised soon, repeated in time, and then eventually had the opportunity to discuss with your professors and whatever, that's the only knowledge you really keep with you forever. And then obviously, if you work in that area, then you will enforce exactly what you did. How important it is to know yourself and then apply this knowledge into your methods to learn. So this should be consideration you should do while learning, because if I know that I learn in this way, then the method I use to study is much more effective. Exactly as if you practice. You know that if you don't eat enough protein, your muscles will never grow up, and you apply those things in everyday life. You should do the same for your brain. And we don't have this approach so spread as much as we can. And in fact, each neuron, the cells of our brain are called neurons. The cells of all our nervous system, central and autonomous nervous system, are called neurons. And they are connected to other neurons, and we have estimated something like, I don't even know how to read this number, it's a million of connection, which is a huge number. You don't have the same number of cells, but you have the same number of connections, because if each one is connected with million, that's a huge number, because then the other one will be connected with millions of millions. So I don't know how to estimate, but there have been studies opening brains of eminent scientists and observing that the connections were more than in people which have dedicated less time to study. So our brain is shaped out of the use that we do of our brain. By the time you are 20, 25 years old, you have already 100 billion of neurons, but then you start losing them, you like or not. This is due to normal aging, or normal growing, if you like, and also is due to the style of life. If you study all along your life, then it's more likely that you will keep some of these neurons back with you. If you abuse of substances which are known to damage the brain cells, then you have an impact on how fast you will lose your cells. However, there are so many, so we can lose some of them without losing all our functionalities. Your brain uses about 20-30% of your body energy. You have had lectures about our metabolism. You know that our body is dependent on oxygen and sugar. 20-30% of that goes into the brain. Although the brain does not account for 20-30% of the muscle of the body. So if you make the ratio of consumption out of real mass, you have an index which is very high into the brain. So if you normalize these 20-30%, if my brain is at 5 kilos, 10 kilos, I don't know, it's 1 on 10 of my total body. So if you normalize this number out of that, it's something like 50% of my consumption per unit of brain, per unit of mass. And what is really making this possible is what happens at synaptic level. Synaptic buttons are exactly the connection between one neural cell to the next. The terminal part of this connection is called the synaptic button, and that's where actually an electrical stimulus coming from the soma, which is the main part of the brain cells, going to the dendrites, which are the disconnection part through the next cell, will arrive. So this is an electrical stimulus, but when this electrical stimulus arrives here, there are some vesicles which get open, controlled by those electrical stimulus, and release some chemical substances which are neurotransmitters. And that's when the chemical side of it enters, well, also the electrical communication is chemical driven, because the carrier of electricity, for those of you having a background in electronics, is not an electron which has no mass. Here we have a current which is made of ions, which means that the carriers, they are under the effect of electromagnetic fields, fine, and gravitational forces, which is something completely new for you, even if you come from electronic engineering. Because all the electronic engineering you have studied so far has been focused on carriers, electrons, which they don't have any mass. So they are not subject to gravitational force. And gravitational force is also pressure, concentration of things in one fluid. So there are more aspects than just gravitation as Newton formalized it. So it's a bit different than the normal electricity that you know, because the carriers are ions. So if an ion meet a wall, it cannot pass through it. An electron has a different dynamic. But once it arrives over there, it's not anymore the electrical stimulus, it's only the ions carriers, which go from one cell to the other. That's where drugs, coffee, tea can play a difference. Because here the action of the chemical aspects of our metabolism becomes far more important. So our thoughts, feelings, actions, memories, and imaginations are the result of what happens in our synapses. Because we build this knowledge, and if we are good enough to maintain this knowledge, then this will become. I don't know if you read this book from, well, without details. If you live in the same place where you are born, you have more memory than those which are born there than when living somewhere else. Because the fact that you pass every day throughout the same square or the same bar or the same pub, you may perceive it or not, but it's a continuous recalling of the same memories. If you have friends which have been, I don't know, from the town you are from, which live down there, while actually if you are here, you're not there, they have stronger memories than you may have. And they will remember details that you have lost in your time. And that's because part of this exercise is not conscious. So the fact that you are exposed to the same circumstance in which this episode happened, it's also triggering your memory and reinforcing those synaptic connections. The fact that you work in an hospital after 20 years, there are things that you just assimilate from the environment. You just see those things happening, and this is reinforcing your knowledge in any area. So part of it is not fully conscious, part of it is. And in fact, we arrived to the paradigm that I think that for AM, if you are familiar with their cards. And therefore, if I don't know, perhaps I'm not. So, you know, there are a lot of speculation that you can do in this. However, I will not enter into those details. It's not the scope of this lecture, but it's just to give you an induction into neurotransmission, which is the base of our biofeedback techniques. We can detect this electrical activity, and you're seeing this with Christopher James. You have been introduced to electroencephalography. Have you? And this is one of the main techniques that you can use. Well, actually, we use any technique. We can use EEG, ECG, galvanic skin response. We may use different signals in order to trigger biofeedback exercise. And so even the fact that those signals are very small does not refrain us to measure the fact that they come from myelons of those small cells. So this is a natural amplifier, and what we read when we measure those activity on the brain, on the scalp, is actually the projection of this inner signal to the surface. So altogether, myelons of neurons activating in the same manner. So a normal brain has a good balance of different brain waves. That's a common principle. We discussed it yesterday heart rate variability, and we said yesterday that a normal subject is a good rate of variation. May move from a steady state to a very excited state in very little time. If you cannot, then you have a problem. Well, not that you have a problem, but those having a problem are less able to move from one state to another. It's the same for our brain, and this reflects our ability to shift easily from one brain state to another. Our evolution went in this direction. We evolved to be able to sit quiet and relax in our tent and then run away if a lion was entering. And those having this capability had more chance to survive. So our brain evolved in this direction. This functional brain may have too much of some of those brain frequencies, so a prevalence of one of that, or may have too much of that and they are unstable. So each one of those add up to different level of problems. They can be too much, unstable, and not balanced by the other kind. So there is a shift and impaired ability to shift from one mental status to another. And those are all things that biofeedback can help to correct. So if you are able to detect a trend, which otherwise would result in something worse, once you are able to train, you can do something on yourself in order to control this trend. Also in this case, there is a video that I suggest you to watch.
I first took my dad to neurofeedback in 1985. He was struggling with severe agitation. We went to top doctors, nothing worked. Then we found neurofeedback, and the effect on him was remarkable. Ever since, I've worked with neurofeedback. So when people ask, what is neurofeedback? They typically want to know how you do it, what it helps, and how it's different than other options. With neurofeedback, anyone can improve their brain. We train children, teenagers, and adults from age 2 to 92. For children, it's often used for ADHD, emotional and behavioral issues, learning and developmental delays, and struggles in school. For adults, it's commonly used for anxiety, depression, obsessing, and sleep problems. Neurofeedback measures brain activity, like brain waves, and it helps you make more or less of certain brain patterns. By changing brain activity, or by changing how one area of the brain talks to another, you can improve attention, control of your emotions, and behavior. There's research on how it helps migraines, pain, concussions, addiction, and seizures. But what do all these have in common? They're brain issues. With neurofeedback, your brain changes itself. And when it does, typically any of these issues improve. It's not all about problems. Neurofeedback improves performance by changing the timing of the brain. That can help anyone in performing in school, business, or sports. It helps give you an edge. Neurofeedback is different from brain games like Lumosity or tutoring or therapy. Those focus on changing your skills or behavior or how you think. Neurofeedback is focused on changing the brain. There are parts of your brain that help you pay attention, that help you be calm, that help manage your mood and your emotions, or that help you sleep. You don't realize how much your brain affects your mind. With neurofeedback, you get to see how changing your brain can have a huge impact on your life. How do you do neurofeedback? First, we put sensors on your head. Commonly, we measure your EEG brain activity with a special computerized system. The system gives you feedback, such as playing a movie or hearing a beep. For example, when you make a certain amount of beta brain waves, the movie will play perfectly. But as soon as you're less alert and awake, the movie starts to fade out. You rapidly learn how to keep the movie from fading out by changing the brain activity that's being trained. Your brain has a way of figuring out how to get the movie to play. Once you learn new patterns, and that may take practice, your brain tends to remember it. There's a lot of published research that shows that the brain learns from feedback and that measurable changes in brain activity occur after training. So how do you change your brain? It's just learning. Children learn to play a video game, and they never read a manual. Their brain figures it out. How do you balance on a bike and not fall over? Somebody probably showed you, but it's your brain that figured out how to balance. When you train brain activity, your brain figures out how to balance its own activity. So once you train the brain, does it stick? Well, you don't forget how to ride a bike, even if you hadn't ridden in 10 years. It's the same with neurofeedback. Once your brain learns, you don't tend to forget it. There are exceptions, particularly if there's disease like Alzheimer's or neurological issues. But there are still ways to train your brain. The changes you make with neurofeedback can over time have a profound effect on learning, memory, attention, mood, migraines, and far more. If you or someone you know could benefit from improving their brain.
Okay, that's just another question. But the concept is there. I think we can stop it now, and then you will find in the material that I will bring for you later some of those details. What do we mean by different brain waves, how we measure them, what is brain frequency, which I think has been also introduced by other colleagues, so there is no reason for repetition. If I remember well, that was marked image. Yes, that's the so-called homunculus of pelvis, which actually reflects how much of our cortical brain, so this is the brain cut as a slice, is dedicated to one of your everyday functions, which means that all this part of the brain is dedicated to controlling the mouth or the voice or and so on and so forth. So there is a physical location in the brain which is dedicated to one particular activity, and that's the part that you can reinforce, making it stronger, larger, more connection by doing a particular biofeedback training. I think we can stop here. This lecture wanted just to be an introduction into this topic for you to be aware of those techniques, which are significant part of, well, significant part. It's another area in which biomedical engineers are very active, especially in 2000.